We are a Passover people, for we are all exiles. We are begotten of a people whose own land was wrenched from them, whose language was stolen, who were homeless, even at home.
All his life, Leo O'Neill was a storyteller.
You already know that in your lives, that love heals. When you're hurt and you have a close friend who understands you, you know you're healed. And God is love.
He built his life around the story of his Christian faith, but he knew and told many other stories. All were personal, some poetic, and a great many were just plain funny.
A little guy here who thinks I've got the weirdest outfit on of all, and he keeps picking up my vestments to see what's underneath them.
The Catholic Church made him a priest, and later a bishop.
Everybody's on their feet.
Absolutely, everyone is standing. The cardinal, the archbishop, the bishop, all the priests, sisters, everybody. It's just, the enthusiasm is just great.
But it was the people of Western Massachusetts, and later New Hampshire, who made him the people's bishop.
To understand Leo O'Neill's life, you have to begin here in Holyoke, Massachusetts. It was here that Leo Edward O'Neill was born on January 31st, 1928. He often referred to himself as the bloke from Holyoke, and in many ways, he never really left this place.
Any account of Leo O'Neill is best told as a story, or rather, a lot of stories.
He wanted his people to know who he was.
His older sister, Geraldine, knew him from birth.
My brother, from my earliest recollections, was born with a Roman collar on. We went to communion every day with those nickel wafers. All different colors. We went to communion, and we didn't think that we were making a mockery of it. We were practicing. We were practicing because he was going to be the greatest priest on earth.
The early years were lean ones for the O'Neills and filled with loss. The year Leo turned 13, his mother, Bertha, died in September.
October was the first day, Columbus Day, that they had a holiday from school, and he rode on his skinny body on his bicycle all day, and came home and opened the kitchen door and yelled, "Bertha!" Then it dawned on me, she was dead. You know how chilly sometimes on a beautiful a sunny day in autumn, the house gets a chill. And that chill came over me, and I'll never forget. Every time I enter a room, now in the fall, and there's that chill in the house, I remember. The house was so empty.
Faith filled the void for young Leo. His path was clear. He would train for the priesthood. It was at a seminary in Montreal that he met John Burke, who early on noticed O'Neill's talent with language.
I remember once he was in a great hurry, and one of the sisters of St. Joseph in Springfield died, and he had the funeral, and he was going to preach at it. He knew her. And he didn't have time to sit down and write a sermon. And what he did was he started writing poetry. And it just flowed out of him.
Some people would look at Holyoke and see a blue-collar, working-class town, but when Leo O'Neill wrote about it, the place came alive.
God, yeah.
He had a passion for this place that he expressed in his writing.
He'd always say about coming down 91 and seeing the city lit up before you. Yeah.
At night, it sparkles and lights up the whole valley. From 91, from memory, from promise, from dreams fulfilled, this city is symbol of our deliverance. Holyoke has been kind to us.
I think the reason why he loved Holyoke is because it was built by immigrants. And it was built by people who were exiled from their countries because of economic oppression or famine or something.
Oh, we known the women of Holyoke leaving the mills and facing the blistering winter winds as they climbed these hills. They were our mothers, our grandmothers, our sisters, our aunts. We remember the quiet men of Holyoke, whose self-esteem was shattered in tiny pieces because they had no work. They were our fathers, our uncles, our brothers, our friends.
That vision for a better life. And I think that's what he was connecting when he talked about Holyoke, and we talked about the women coming down and up this hill from the factories, and when he talked about the quiet men, I think he was talking about a generation of people who were in World War I, World War II, went through the Depression, and gave and didn't ask anything in return.
Hail, Holyoke, hail.
Leo's eloquence enabled him to speak for the powerless and to evoke the pain of his Irish forebears, even as he would celebrate the festivities of St. Patrick's Day.
We cannot make light of corned beef and cabbage. It is our Passover feast. It cries our poverty, our shame, our exile, our defeat. It is our bitters.
Though the Irish were past their time of shame in America, O'Neill applied those bitter lessons to other, newer minorities.
When he was in Holyoke, he saw all these Spanish people. And there was an accident, and some children were killed in a fire. And the Spanish-speaking people had no priest, and he went down and he talked with them.
My Spanish, to say the least, is horrible.
And the way he learned Spanish was he went into the Spanish homes on Saturday night, and they were playing cards and some game, I forget, something to do with pennies. And he would spend the evening with them, and that's how he learned his Spanish.
After 21 years of ministering around the diocese, Leo O'Neill got what he wanted. It was his own parish, St. Mary's in Haydenville, Massachusetts.
I thought that Haydenville was everything that I had lusted for in my life. A beautiful parish, a wonderful setting, and I was pastor. And really that was the fulfillment of all my hopes.
Mm-hmm. Sister Mary Lou Gillen worked as a pastoral minister with Father O'Neill, who quickly earned a reputation for taking the church to the people.
Goshen is noted for its camping, and it was nothing to have 500 people in a very remote part of the diocese here at Mass on their blankets out in a field because they were there camping, and he again went to them rather than them having to travel down here.
Annie was a maiden Irish lady who came over and worked for priests all her life and in rectories. And she was in her 80s, and he brought her with him when she was really declining, but he brought her with him when he was made the pastor of St. Mary's in Haydenville. I can remember I'd go out of my mind because Annie was deaf and she couldn't hear the kettle whistling, you know? And he'd go very patiently and put off the burner and make the tea for her. And well, she died, and I can never forget, we were standing, I think, in Holy Cross Cemetery in Springfield, and suddenly a wind came up through the trees, and you could hear a whistle, and he said, Annie, the teapot is whistling. And everyone knew what he was saying. Yeah.
Father O'Neill was pastor at St. Mary's for 4 years, until the church made it clear it had bigger plans for him.
Are you resolved to show kindness and compassion in the name of the Lord to the poor and to strangers and to all who are in need?
I am.
Father O'Neill was now Bishop O'Neill.
That was heartfelt applause in Springfield when he was made bishop. I think they figured that he earned it, yeah. And they were happy that somebody that didn't seek this office was getting this honor.
He always used to say his was the Mission Impossible story that God had weaved, because he really wanted to be a parish priest, to be a pastor. I often kidded him and used to say, I have what you want, and you have what I don't want. And he'd say, yeah.
As bishop, Leo O'Neill traveled all over western Massachusetts. He always emphasized teaching young people about their religion.
In the old days, people would bring up, when we came to Mass, people would bring up gifts, like food. And the priest would take those and he would give those to poor people. And after he had taken the food, if people brought up chickens or eggs or potatoes or tomatoes, the priest's hands would get all dirty, so we had to wash them. So every time you see the priest wash his hands at Mass, you've got to think, we've got to be kind to the poor.
And of course, no Mass would be complete without Bishop O'Neill's high fives. After 9 years as auxiliary bishop of Springfield, Leo O'Neill continued his reluctant ascent within the church. This time, he was needed in New Hampshire.
I'm afraid to leave Springfield, to leave western Massachusetts, and go on a journey that I don't know where it's going to take me. And a bishop from Chicago, probably knowing how I felt, sent this card to me. Consult not your fears, but your hopes and your dreams. Think not about your frustrations, but about your unfulfilled potential. Concern yourself not what you tried and failed in, but what is still possible to do.
Still, he foresaw that this would be his final move, and it would be away from friends and family.
This will be the hardest human experience that I have, will be the wrenching of friendships and coming, you know, it was kind of a sobering thought that, wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you die, I will die also, that, you know, probably I will die in New Hampshire, and that, you know, I will terminate my ministry there.
In October of 1989, Leo O'Neill arrived in Manchester. Amid the crush of church dignitaries, the sunny qualities that marked him as the people's bishop were clearly evident.
In a memorable moment from his welcoming Mass, Bishop Leo stated, "I am home." He also made it clear early on that his emphasis in New Hampshire would be on people, not administration.
The business side of it, which a bishop has to be concerned about, he was very happy to delegate. To me, most often, which I will never forgive him for.
So Bishop Leo got to know the people of New Hampshire, like the Donahue family of Manchester, whose 3 oldest sons served as altar boys. They liked the bishop so much, they invited him to dinner. And he accepted.
Typical Irishman. He loved potatoes and no onions, absolutely no onions, so to me that was very typical Irish. And so we made chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, no gourmet food. I think he was a very simple man, and his taste, was simple.
But his job was not. As head of the New Hampshire Church, Bishop O'Neill frequently spoke out on what he saw as issues of public morality. One was the fight over what has become known as physician-assisted suicide.
My bill is called Physician Aid in Dying. It's not suicides.
Representative Bob Guest has tried to get his bill on physician aid in dying passed in every session since 1989.
It's very simple. So my Catholic friends, legislators, known to be progressives, like I have, I think, came up to me, "Bob, they say I got in with 51% of the vote. All it took was the priest or the bishop to send that letter out, and I would lose. Therefore, you'd get some extreme right-winger in, voting against all the good things we believe in."
Some legislatures will listen to us, listen to our arguments. Some will bring up the idea of separation of church and state. Some will be very opposed to what we have to say and vehemently opposed to what we have to say. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to back off.
Based on my religious upbringing.
But Leo O'Neill could and did change his mind on another emotional issue, the Gay Rights Amendment to the State Bill of Rights. In 1994, the church opposed it and managed to defeat it. But the bill's sponsor felt there was hope.
I sensed a desire on the part of the bishop to follow through on the teaching of the church about human rights in general. And I knew that he had some difficulties with the bill as written.
Representative McCann said he was going to talk to the bishop. And Bill McCann is a very conscientious Catholic. And he'd taken a lot of criticism for being the sponsor of this bill. And I thought it was a little naive. He kept saying, I think we can get the church's support. And I thought, well, when were you born?
But it was no joke. When the bill was reintroduced in 1997, Leo O'Neill asked only for a preamble, clarifying that the state was not endorsing homosexuality. With that concession, he endorsed the bill, despite the protests of more conservative Catholics.
It wasn't any little lip service thing. Bishop O'Neill called all of the Catholic senators, and not in any pro forma way. He argued for the bill. He personally lobbied for it because he thought it was the right thing. It was absolutely amazing. Complete dramatic turnaround, and it was clearly the bishop's own decision, his conscience.
I think this shows him to be a person who has the ability to lead, to take the church's teaching, even though it may be unpopular with some people.
This is the one place where it was done with the graceful help of the Catholic Church. And I'm sure that the Catholic gay and lesbian people feel good about that. And all of us gotten a major benefit.
Conciliation over confrontation, that was Bishop Leo's style. And as the people's bishop, he always remembered that priests are people too.
You can approach the bishop and not feel frightened. Years ago, we had bishops, I guess, here in this diocese that were, you just shook in your boots to even go near the bishop or even talk to the bishop. You were given your assignment, like on the day before you were to report, tomorrow you'll be in such and such a parish. It doesn't happen like that now. You have dinner with the bishop. He talks to you, wants your input, whether you'd like to go to this particular town or city, and see how you feel about it.
Sometimes in the early spring evening, we'd pass a home and see candles piercing the darkness. We knew who lived there and what awesome events were being celebrated. Passover. In recent years, its power and its beauty have become more known to us.
Stirred by memories of his childhood, Leo O'Neill often reached out to members of other faiths.
12 or 15 years ago, I had started a Bible study group for members of the clergy, and Bishop Gendron was a part of it. And when Bishop O'Neill came to town, he joined right in, and we would meet. First, we met here at the temple for a while, but then we wound up meeting at the bishop's residence here in Manchester. And there were about a dozen of us that would get together to study Bible once a month for an hour and a half, and the discussions always moved on to other subjects.
One of the subjects they discussed, whether abortion should be performed here at the Elliott Hospital in Manchester, which in 1994 was merging with the Catholic Medical Center.
And I said to him, I just want you to know, I understand where you, we were on different sides of this issue on whether there should be freedom of choice, but I said, I know where you stand in this, and I understand and respect your beliefs. And he says, and I respect yours.
As a man of faith, Leo O'Neill faced perhaps his fiercest ordeal when he discovered in 1993 that he was ill with cancer.
I never knew what people meant when they said, gee, I hate the hospital. I hate the hospital. And I know exactly how they feel now. The claustrophobia, the powerlessness, the fear, the unknown.
And so Leo O'Neill did what he had always done. He told a story. But this time, it was about his coming to terms with mortality.
I was talking with another bishop and saying, just asking him, because we were in a good conversation, do you fear? He said, why wouldn't you? We were on Cape Cod, and he said, what a great, beautiful day. Not to know this, anymore is a tremendous loss. But I have to believe that something greater is awaiting me. And I'm not too sure that, you know, down the road, that I'm going to be as brave as I am now, or that I'm going to be able to accept whatever's going to come. I have to take that a day at a time. And I have to rely on God's grace for that.
You could see the yearning in his eyes to not be able to do what he loved to do, where he couldn't participate anymore, where now he's an observer. He has to sit in a wheelchair. It was heart-wrenching, really.
The doctors are not putting any timeline on my life. They are just saying, take it day by day, enjoy every day, rejoice in the gift of life, and enjoy your friends.
4 years after his first diagnosis, Bishop Leo O'Neill announced he had a second and inoperable form of cancer and would soon die.
And I said, I don't believe it. And he said, yes, I am going to die. There's no hope. I'm going home for Christmas. He said, but I'm at peace. I'm very calm. I accept this. You can't fall apart, because if you fall apart, then I'm going to fall apart. And I said to him, well, you know, buddy, I'm not at all curious to see what's on the other side. And he said, well, I am. I am. He said, I'm very curious. He said, my faith tells me that we're going to be at peace on the other side.
The goal is to let me die here, in this house.
Bishop Leo had one other goal, to say goodbye to his priests. So he requested one final, painful blood transfusion.
And it enabled him to go to the cathedral and say goodbye to his priest.
I have to let go. I have to value God more than anything else. I'm a coward. And that's not coming easy to me. I began a walk with you 8 years ago, and I'm not putting the burden on you or grandstand play by saying now that it is going to be your responsibility to walk with me to the gate of the kingdom.
5 days after that address, Leo O'Neill died. When the end came, his sister reached back to their childhood for her farewell gesture.
Buddy and I shared a bed, and my mother and father shared a bed. So when they came that night, Joanne was in the house, I was in the house, and the nurse came up and touched me. She just touched me, and I knew. And I went flying downstairs, and they said to me, have a chair. And I said, no, I don't want a chair. So I got in bed with my brother, and I figured if we start life in a double bed together, we can go out the same way. And I held him in my arms.
Shepherd me, O God, beyond my wants, beyond my fears.
What do you remember him about, Joe? What do you remember best when you think happy thoughts about him?
How nice he was.
To you?
To everyone.
He was nice to everyone, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you guys went to the funeral and you were in the big church, you guys weren't real sad, huh? It's almost like you were happy that you knew he was in a happy place.
Yeah, but we were sad.
At the same time?
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember he gave me my first communion.
He gave you your first communion?
Yeah.
On
Thanksgiving, and he gave me my first confession and penance.
Joey and Hannah brought dirt from Holyoke for their uncle's grave, for he had chosen burial in Manchester.
He said, do you think I left an impact? And I said, glory be to God. If you didn't leave an impact, nobody has. You know, who would have been more?
He taught us how to die, right to the end. He was a great teacher.
He reminded us of the best of what it is to be a follower of Jesus Christ, and that is his legacy.
I said to my mother, I wish he was like lousier at the end so I wouldn't so I'd have something to resent him for. But he was really, I mean, his courage broke my heart.
What was the best thing about the bishop?
That he loved us and he cared and he knew all our sins, even if we didn't tell him.
You told him about all your sins?
No, my mom and dad and my grandma.
I was out of the country at the time when Bishop O'Neill died. And when I returned, there were two things waiting for me. Newspaper accounts of his death and a note he had written me, encouraging me and my work in television. I never had the chance to respond or to thank him, but if he were here today, I know there's one thing I'd ask for.
One final story. Once there was a lady in one of the parishes that I was at, and she always had to say something nice after the liturgy. I love people like that. And one day the liturgy was terrible. The homily was horrendous. I know, I preached it. The altar boys were fooling around and everything was wrong. And I saw her coming as I was waiting after Mass for the people to come out, and I saw her coming and I said, please God, don't let her say anything nice today. Because if she does, I can never believe her again. And she came up to me and she put her arm on my shoulder and she said, Father, you have lovely vestments on today. Bishop McGuire, my brother priest, my dear friends, when everything goes wrong, please tell me I've got nice vestments on.
Stay tuned for Mind Talk, the brain's new story, coming up next on New Hampshire Public Television.